Chapter 1. The Crossing. Before the stone towers floated before the first iron-pierced wet clay, there was only Talay, the black, unmoving sea. In those days, a heartbeat was not a currency. It was a mirror reflecting a silent, unwritten sky. From the fragments of the Asina Bitig verse 1. Ertan ran! Ahead of him, Tomris's long brown hair whipped behind her like a war banner. She glanced back every few strides, and each time she confirmed he was still on her heel, she flashed him a grin and pushed harder. That grin was the one thing Ertan wished he could keep. It was fast, proud, and fearless, in a way he had never learned to be. He wanted to freeze the moment, to seal it inside one of his precious life essence traps and carry it with him for the rest of his life. But they had a ritual to break, or fix depending on who lived through the next hour. The 43rd Grand Ritual was already underway. 1,300 volunteers and 1,300 sacrifices stood on the holy platform at the heart of Kut Orda, the holy city. The largest Akin ever launched at the other side, where the magical surges had been eating the world year by year. 1,300 names in 1,300 temple scrolls, all of them about to be sung into the archives as Akinsha, the Crossed. Legends, heroes of the Kaganite, or more accurately, bodies. 1,300 bodies to buy a single passage into the Ergenekon, the realm between worlds. The same passage had been opened 42 times in 30 years, and 42 times nothing had returned but silence. The Akenshi of the 38th had been his first teacher at the academy. The 39th had been his father's old squire. The 40th had been a girl from his first tutoring class. Ertan was going to end it today. He had to. The worse the surges grew, the longer the Akines ran, and the higher the sacrifice numbers climbed, and every climb of the number made him sick to his stomach. The outer plaza came up fast. Tomris skidded around the last corner of the pilgrim road, and Ertan followed half a step behind his satchel slapping against his ribs. The crowd opened in front of them like a dam giving way. 500,000 pilgrims. That was a conservative count. They filled every stone of the plaza, every rooftop, every balcony of the 7 towers that ringed the holy ground. Kut Orda had been built around this place, not the other way around. The city's avenues all aimed inward like the spokes of a wheel, and at the hub of the wheel stood the statue of Ergenekon, lord of the above hand of Tengri. The statue had been carved from a single slab of mountain granite by a sculptor whose name had been stripped from the record on purpose. The work was supposed to belong to the god, not the artist. Elgin's open palms lifted toward the sky, and in the shadow of those palms, raised on a circular platform 30 paces across the ritual, was already alive. Ertan's stride broke for half a second so he could read it. He couldn't help it. His hands shook when he tried to cast, but they had never shaken when he studied craft. The platform's outer ring burned with kokdamgask, root sigils. They were gathering. Every pilgrim's voice, every praying breath, every belief in the plaza below was being drawn up by the root sigils and channeled inward like 100 rivers running into a single pool. The middle ring was baudamgask, binding sigils. Those locked the collected power into the bodies of the Akensilar lined up around the spiral. The innermost ring was the crossing pattern itself, a tight spiral of glyphs carved into dark metal. Tau moonstone alloy by the shimmer, and tuned to tear a temporary seam between Kut Dunya and the Ergenekon. Simple in principle, elegant in craft, monstrous in cost, a life for a single passage. Ertan's satchel thudded against his side, and inside it, something small and alive shifted. His throat tightened.
Keep up.
I am keeping up.
You are not.
She was right. She wasn't even out of breath. They hit the outer ring of temple guards. 2 men in pale blue sashes spotted them and broke into a run. Tomris didn't slow. She threw her hands forward, and the air in front of her folded into a staircase of her own making. Light and shadow. That was her inheritance. The Turan line had bred teleporters and binders for 6 generations, and Tomris had come out of the womb drawing both breaths at once. She wasn't the teleporter her father was. Not yet. But she was the only student in her year who could form light and shadow constructs on a run at full speed without faltering. Each step hung in the air in front of her as a pale plane of light braced underneath by a black vein of shadow that locked it against gravity. The stairs climbed the platform's side in 4 swift bounds.
Up, up.
Ertan hit the first step at a sprint. It held. As long as Tomris kept it held. It always held, and he always distrusted it anyway. Light and shadow didn't feel like stone. It felt like a drum skin with something serious underneath. His boot sank half a finger's width. The shadow beneath caught him and shoved back up. The sensation was wrong. His stomach agreed it was wrong. He ignored his stomach and climbed. On the platform the chant broke. 40 shamans in white and gold stood in a great ring around the spiral, and the grey-bearded man at their center had just opened his eyes. Magister Sankar Toran, head of the ritual arm of the Guk Academy, master teleporter, the finest in the Khaganate, the only living shaman who could cross the length of a battlefield in a single breath without losing a finger to the jump. Master of light and shadow, Ertan's oldest living teacher, Tomris's father. Sankar was tall and raw-boned in the way of men who had been soldiers before they were scholars. His grey beard reached past his ceremonial sash. His hands were lifted over the spiral, and the kutra was pouring out of them like water from an upturned jar. He did not stop the chant when he saw his daughter. He only flicked 2 fingers, and the guards running up behind Ertan staggered and went still pinned by a shadow bind around their ankles. His eyes, grey, cold, tired, found Ertan's. Ertan knew how hard the old man had worked to find 1,300 souls for this Aken. And he knew too that today he was going to humiliate that work in front of the entire Khaganate. There was no version of this that did not cost Sankar Turan something. The only thing Ertan could offer in return was the proof that all of it could end. That after today no Bahadur, no shaman, not even the Kutlas of the border companies would need to beg a pilgrim to die for them. That the surges might finally stop bleeding the world, if the regime did not throw them all in the dark for trying first. He's not surprised. He knew we'd come. Then he caught the small twitch at the corner of Sankar's right eye. Well, maybe a little surprised. Ertan cleared the last step and dropped into a crouch on the platform's edge. The wood under his boots was 2 millennia old and saturated with a century of ritual. It felt warm, hot almost. The closer he got to the spiral, the more the air tasted of copper and burned mindstone. He reached into his satchel and lifted out 2 things. The first was Chanavar. Chanavar. Monster. A joke name and also the truest name Ertan had ever given anything. The little golem fit in one hand, about the shape of a stubby-legged cat crossed with a pup. His clay body was patched with sewn linen along the belly where Ertan had opened and rebuilt him a dozen times. His amber eyes, 2 chips of real eye-touch, the most expensive stones Ertan had ever owned, glowed faintly in the cut, charged air. Inside Chanavara's small body lay 47 essence-soaked mind stones connected by hundreds of mineral filaments in a threading pattern Ertan had designed himself. Damar Erme, the old word for it. Vein weaving. The art of layering kut pathways inside a construct until the flow no longer ran in simple loops, until it moved like thought with logic riding on top of it. No other golem in the academy had more than 3 heartstones. Chanavar had 47, enough to run his small strange motions, more than enough to power a crossing if the crossing was small enough. And when Kut ran through Chanavar in the right pattern at the right density, the stones wept. Tiny gold drops gathered at the junctions where the threading was densest. Life essence. The same substance that a sacrificed body released, produced here by a handful of stones and clay and careful, patient craft. Ertan had proven it alone in his room weeks ago on the night of a random Tuesday. He had not told anyone but Tomris. He had not let anyone but Tomris practice. He set Chanavar down in the center of his own carefully drawn counter-spiral and pulled out the second object, the polyhedron. 20 faces of pure blown crystal, each edge inlaid with a hair-thin line of silver-lead alloy. An essence trap. 4 months of grinding. 3 months of Ertan's salary. The most precise piece of craft he had ever made, and the only vessel in the Academy capable of holding raw life essence without weeping it through its own walls. Inside the crystal, nothing. Empty space, waiting. He set it down at the spiral's outer edge.
Jump!
5 seconds.
She was already drawing the sigils for her own teleport. Her hands moved in quick, practiced arcs. Light and shadow in a tight ring. Not a long jump. Her range was short, 10, maybe 15 paces on a good day. Enough to cross the platform at the moment of the crossing and ride Chanavara's essence across the world, seem. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. Tomris crosses. Chanavar dies. The polyhedron holds his life essence. The Academy learns that a golem can replace a human sacrifice. Tomris returns. No more 43rd, no more 44th, no more 1,300 names and 1,300 scrolls. After that, every Bahadur, every shaman, even the Kutlas border companies could go through without begging a pilgrim to bleed for them. The surges would stop being a tax on the next generation. The world would finally stop bleeding. Unless the regime change, everyone whispered about came first and threw the work back by 20 years. His hands shook as he began to draw the collector glyph in chalk around Chanavara's paws. It shouldn't shake. I have practiced this 1,000 times.
Don't betray me now, Hands. You gave up manifesting years ago. You don't get to give up on this, too.
They shook the way they always shook when he tried to cast. The body's old habit. A childhood broken thing the healers at the House of Umai had never managed to repair. He drew anyway. Chalk. Willow leaf sigil. Binding stroke. Counter willow. A hair-thin line connecting Chanavar to the polyhedron. The pattern came out clean. His hands had practiced this in his sleep for 3 months straight. Then he felt it, a wrongness off to his left. A small, cold wrongness at the edge of his thoughts like a draft coming under a door that was supposed to be sealed. He looked up. At the foot of the platform, flanked by his household guards in black and silver, stood Governor Kultigan Kara, the governor of the Holy City, Tomris's grandfather. A stout, broad-shouldered man in his late 70s with the bearing of someone who had never walked into a room he did not believe he owned. He was not chanting. He was not praying. His mouth was set in a thin, flat line, and his eyes traveled across the platform with the calm irritation of a man forced to watch an expensive ceremony he disapproved of. Everyone in the Khaganate knew the whispers. The governor claimed a drop of the Kut of Kagan's. The divine right to rule ran in his veins. He was only one political misstep away from declaring himself Kagan in his own name. None of that was what bothered Ertan. What bothered Ertan was the man standing 1 pace behind Kultigan's right shoulder, a tall figure in a deep red cloak, the new head of the city guards. The previous head had been handed over to the Khaganate by Kultigan himself a month ago. A sacrifice meant to prove the governor's house was loyal, while the governor's house quietly prepared for something else. The red-cloaked man had his hood up. The hood hid the face almost completely. All Ertan could see was the line of a jaw and a pale, patient mouth. The man was not praying. The man was not moving. The man had no shadow. Every other figure in the plaza cast a shadow toward the east bent by the morning sun. The red cloak stood alone on a white stone, and beneath him the stone was clean. No pool dark, no angle, nothing. Ertan stopped breathing. That's wrong. That is not a thing that can happen. A horse at the outer line of the governor's guard screamed. It was a Kagan-bred stallion, a warhorse, the kind that did not spook for cannons. The groom fought the reins with both arms. The stallion's eyes rolled white foam flying. It was staring directly at the red cloak. The red cloak did not turn, but the pale mouth curved upward just a little. A cold line ran down Ertan's back, deeper than sweat, older than thought. The part of him that had once been 12 years old and standing in a destroyed village recognized this feeling. It was the feeling of being looked at by something that should not be in the world.
Ertan. Sigils.
He tore his eyes down. Later. Think about him later. His fingers closed the collector glyph. The instant the last stroke met the first, the platform's kutra reached into Ertan's counter-spiral and locked onto Chanavar. A thin thread of gold light opened between Chanavar's chest and the polyhedron. The crystal's empty space began very slowly to fill, liquid gold climbing the inside of the trap. It was working.
Yay! What in Rudgeon's name do you think you are doing?
Sankar Taran strode toward them. 3 long steps across the platform, his ceremonial robes snapping around his ankles, his chant left behind for the other 40 shamans to carry. His voice carried over the ritual song like a hammer over a bell. Ertan did not look up. He couldn't. If he looked up, his hands would falter.
Magister, I'm proving a better way.
You are desecrating the ritual.
No, Magister. I'm augmenting it. No one dies after today who doesn't want to.
1,300 have already given consent. You do not alter a grand ritual mid-working. You will collapse the draw.
I won't. I've run the numbers. My counter spiral is tuned half a degree off the main. It siphons surplus, not core flow. My way only follows the road the ancient ritual is already opening.
You will do no such thing.
I left my notes in my chamber. Magister, every calculation, every sigil. If I die today, you can still read them and fix this. Fix our world.
A boot landed beside him on the wood. He smelled the old ceremonial incense that clung to Sankar's sleeves.
Ergenekon.
The Magister's voice had dropped, lower, harder, the voice he used on students about to be expelled.
Stop, now. If you break this ritual in front of Governor Kultigan, my influence cannot save you. You will be dragged behind horses through every ward of this city before sundown. Do you understand? I cannot shield you this time.
Wait, no.
Then stop.
I can't, teacher. I'm sorry.
Sankar Turan looked down at him for one long beat. And then, as the old man had always done when faced with Ertan, he turned his attention to the more dangerous Turan in the room.
And you.
Tomris's hands stilled on her half-drawn teleport sigil. She lifted her chin.
Father.
You are 3 months into your teachership.
I know, Father.
Your grandfather cannot protect you from this.
I know, Father.
Get off my platform.
No.
Sankar's face did not harden. It did the opposite. It softened for one instant. The softening of a man who has just realized he has already lost the argument and is preparing for the cost. Then the outer chant reached its apex. The Arcantular began to glow. One by one, starting from the outermost ring of volunteers and working inward in a slow, bright wave, 1,300 men and women began to release their life essence. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing Ertan had ever seen. Their bodies grew translucent. Their eyes filled with warm gold light. There, cut. All they had, all they were, peeled away from their flesh and flowed back to the volunteers behind them. Some of the volunteers were smiling. Some were weeping. Most had simply closed their eyes. Ertan's chest locked. This is what the Academy calls a necessary cost. This is what they do every season. He looked down at Chanavar. The little golem was staring up at him. The amber eyes were full of light now. Chanavar's own threaded kut rising in response to the draw. Chanavar tilted his head the way he had started doing this past month. The gesture was not one Ertan had ever taught him.
I'm sorry, buddy. If she comes back, I'll make you again. I have all the stones. I have every thread drawn. I have...
The kut draw took the last of Chanavar. The gold light inside the little golem blazed bright, brighter and brighter, and then poured out through the collector glyph into the polyhedron in a single continuous torrent. The polyhedron filled. Faces of crystal blazed. The essence inside moved like captive sunlight. Chanavar's amber eyes dimmed. The little head drooped. The stubby legs folded. The clay body settled gently onto its side on the wood and stopped moving. Ertan could not breathe. He could not make himself breathe. His hand stayed on the little golem's back, and for one terrible second the entire ritual fell away, and there was only the fact of Chanavar gone still under his palm.
Ertan.
Tomris's voice, snapping him back. The polyhedron was full. The gate was open.
Jump. Tomris. Jump now. The polyhedron is full. Jump.
Tomris closed her eyes. Her hands lifted toward Ertan. She was ready to grab the polyhedron and ride Shanavar's essence across the world, seem exactly the way they had practiced. She never made the step. She never made the step. Sankar Turan moved. The Magister had been a master teleporter for 40 years, and he gave no warning of what he was about to do. He simply reached out, closed one hand around his daughter's wrist, and the flash of his teleport bloomed around them both. One heartbeat, Sankar stood 5 paces away. The next, both of them were gone. The next, Ertan's eyes found them. They were 50 paces away on the far side of Elgin's statue. Sankar, clamping Tomris against his chest. Tomris already fighting him, twisting, clawing, trying to break the grip. Her light and shadow sigil still glowed above her open palm, useless, short-circuited by the jump. The polyhedron was still full. The ritual's energy was still holding the gate open. Ertan was alone on the platform. His lungs unlocked in a single hard breath. His brain ran 100 calculations in 1 second. The Akenseler all around him had gone nearly transparent. They were about to be pulled through. The collector glyph was still tethered to the polyhedron. The polyhedron was tethered to the spiral's intake. Whichever living vessel stood closest to the spiral when the crossing pulsed would drink the extra essence and be carried through with the Akenseler. That vessel was Ertan.
Ertan, break the polyhedron. Jump off the platform. Ertan, break it.
He looked at her. 50 paces. 50 impossible paces. He looked down at Shanavar's still body. He looked at the polyhedron.
If I break it, they'll never let anyone try this again.
Ertan.
They'll say it didn't work. They'll sacrifice 2,000 next season, and 4,000 after that.
You can't manifest. Ertan, you can't even cast a spark. How will you come back?
He swallowed. He smiled at her. It was a small, crooked smile, the one Shanavar had always seemed to approve of.
I'll find a way. I always find a way.
Tomris stopped fighting her father. For one heartbeat, she went utterly still in his arms. Then she twisted hard enough to face Ertan across the gulf of the plaza. Sankar's grip loosened. Not in surrender, but because even Sankar Turan was not quite willing to break his daughter's shoulder to hold her still. She met Ertan's eyes. And across 50 paces of air, across 500,000 pilgrims, across the gold rising off the platform, across the statue of a god who had once sacrificed himself for the same reason. Ertan was about to. Tomris said it.
I love you.
The word love hit Ertan harder than the coot draw. He stared at her. His brain, which had run 100 calculations a second just a moment ago, could produce exactly one question in response. It came out of his mouth before any better answer could be assembled.
Really? Me?
He never heard her answer. The crossing pulsed. The polyhedron's essence poured up out of the crystal and into him. It entered through his chest in a single, cold, hot wave that was not pain and not pleasure, but something entirely its own. His bones rang like struck bells. His vision split into 100 colors at once. He saw for half a breath every sigil on the platform as if he had drawn them himself. He saw the spiral above him take shape as a shining willow leaf gate as tall as a temple. The last thing he saw clearly was Tomris's face, lit from below by the rising gold, lips still open on whatever word she had been about to say next. Then the world folded. No sound, no sense of motion, only every color compressed into a shape he had no word for. Then a pressure like being pushed through a keyhole the size of a grain of sand. Then silence so absolute that his ears invented the sound of his own heartbeat to fill it. And then sand, cool sand under his cheek. A sky the color of an old bruise, with no sun in it. The polyhedron lying half a pace from his outstretched hand, half empty now. Just enough left to push one body back. Ertan opened his eyes. The Ergenekon opened back.